Hello there, my fellow boomers, old farts, and over 55 crowd. I'm Doug, and you're listening to Dying to Retire, a show about retiring on your own terms from a guy who is actually doing it. Think of this show as those late nights sitting around the fire pit, a cigar in hand, a beer or two, no wives or girlfriends around to hear it, just no shit conversation and a little friendly judgment between guys who have earned the right to talk some shit. If you know, you know. Let's get started. Welcome back. Let's start this episode talking about cars because this is something I've been thinking about for my move to Guatemala. Now, I'm not buying right away. The plan is to wait until early to mid 2027. So the first few months down there, I will just be taking Uber pretty much everywhere I go, unless it's a short walk, until I get all of this sorted out. One of the reasons why I'm delaying buying the car right away when I get down there in a couple of weeks is taxes. When I pull out money of my retirement accounts, that money gets taxed as income, both state and federal. If I pulled out more money this year for a car, it would get added to what has already been withdrawn for Casa Douglas to date. And I do not want to raise myself into the above 30% tax rate. We're there, but I just don't want to go much higher. So that's a big part why I'm not rushing into this right away. Besides, Uber has worked very well to date. And when I do buy, I want to get a small to mid-size SUV, nothing oversized, because I want to be able to get in and out of it easily. Also, ideally, this is the last car I will ever buy, so I want something that will last, at least for the next 10 years or so. Here in Maryland, I drive a Hyundai Palisade. It's an okay car, a mid-size SUV, but climbing in and out has become a little problematic these days because my ass is old and fat. And sometimes getting in and out of that car, it's a bitch. In Guatemala, for the most part, you do not see the same lineup of cars that you see here in the United States. You see plenty of 20-year-old versions of American cars. Yes, you do. Various degrees of used, right? You also see European brands like Fiat that barely show up in the US market anymore. And you see a whole lot of Chinese vehicles that are not sold here at all. Now, for the Chinese cars, the options range from sedans to SUVs to pickup trucks, just like in the US. They have gas options, they have pure electric options, and then they have the plug-in hybrids. Now, I wanted to actually understand the good and the bad and the ugly of these options, so I did some research. And here's the basic maintenance breakdown in all three engine types. First, let's talk about gas engines. Pretty standard. We all know them, right? You got gas, spark plugs, belts, brake pads, transmission fluid, and then some. Now let's look at the EV about maintenance. There's no sitting at the dealer waiting for an oil change. There's no crossing your fingers hoping the mechanic put the oil filter on right. Had that happen to the Palisade just the other day. There are no spark plugs, no timing belts, no fuel injectors. The whole engine thing just does not exist anymore. But here's the trade-off I did not expect to find out about. All that instant torque from the electric motor plus the weight of the battery pack burns through tires faster than how you burn through tires of a regular car. So you need to have very good quality tires that are actually built to handle this type of wear. The batteries in these cars have their own coolant systems and they need flushing every 40 to 60,000 miles to keep that battery pack healthy. Now let's look at the plug-in hybrid. And this is where I was actually leaning. On paper, part of it sounds like the worst of both worlds. You've got a battery pack, for the faster tire wear and the coolant flush, but then on top of that, you have a gas engine that still needs oil changes and spark plugs. So that's kind of double the service. But I was still leaning towards this initially. Now, do not lump all hybrids together because that is where people get a lot of this wrong. BYD, Build Your Dreams, is very active down in Guatemala, and they have this thing called a series parallel hybrid, right? The BYD Shark, the Sea Lion, and a few others. I think it's the song, BYD song. Most of the time, the gas engine is just running a generator feeding the battery, while the electric motor does the actual driving or powering your drive. But at highway speeds, that same gas engine now kicks in and starts powering the front wheels. So right there, you have two distinctive drivetrains doing real work at the same time, and both of them need their own regular maintenance. Now, compare that to the Scout. Not sure if you've seen the commercials for it. It is a vehicle being done by the Volkswagen Group, so it's going to be made in America. It is supposed to be coming out in 2028. You will be getting two options: a full EV Scout that's either a pickup or an SUV, or that same true EV, but with what they call the Harvester. It's a gas powered range extender. But what's different from the BYD version, that gas engine will only ever charge the battery. It never touches the wheels, not once at any speed. So the electric motor drives the vehicle full stop. The two systems never overlap. That is a different animal altogether from what BYD is doing at the moment, and it's worth noting or knowing which powertrain and drivetrain you are buying into before you lay down some good hard-earned cash. It's your money, be wise with it. Now, no matter which one, let me rephrase this, sorry, I can't even talk today. No matter which one you end up buying or driving, some shit never changes. Wipers, cabin filter, suspension checks, brake fluid every, what, 2, 3 years. You need tire rotations every, what, 5 to 10,000 miles. That part does not care about what's under the hood. However, the high cost of battery replacements still worries me on the EV side. That price needs to come down a lot before I call it a clean win. However, the car companies are now putting longer warranties on their battery packs. So that is something that's really good. Some do 8 years, some do 10 years. Now, if you sit me down and made me do a blind pick, the lowest maintenance wins, and that would be the pure EV. Now, here's something specific to living down in Guatemala that I had not thought about until I started digging into this. All that battery weight, 500 to 1,000 extra pounds over a regular car, is one thing. Now add the fun of Guatemalan roads, speed bumps the size of small mountains, the tumulos, a shit ton of potholes, and the cobblestone streets of Antigua. And if I'm going to Guatemala City, I'm going to go around Antigua where I don't have to go over those cobblestone streets. Now, that combination altogether puts more stress on the suspension than it would do a regular car. So if I go electric or a plug-in electric, I'll be likely checking my shocks and struts or whatever they use and the alignment a lot more often than I would be doing here in the States. And then there's the charging, which is its own animal down there. You do not want to be relying on public chargers in Guatemala, not so much, because the majority of them are level 1 chargers, and even though they're getting the better, faster chargers coming in there, they're few and far between, but it is getting better. The real move is putting in your own home a level 2 or better charger, especially if you're gonna be putting solar on your house, because if the grid goes down, you don't have to worry about it. Also, rainy season brings voltage swings sometimes and blackouts to those chargers in your home or the chargers where you plug it in at the, let's say, Oakland Mall, those things. So you have to be mindful of there. And I don't want a power spike fry my onboard charger on the car, nor do I want it to fry my system at the house. So you need to have a really good solar battery management system because that will not only help your house in the long run, it'll also help ensure or help keep your car lasting a little bit longer. So that means you need to have a really good surge protector, a voltage regulator. I'm not sure what they're called for those solar systems, but you're going to need to actually make sure you have something in there. That's not optional. It's protecting your investments. Now, here's the part that actually gets me excited. Think about the drive between Antigua and Guatemala City. It is a route I'm likely going to take on a regular basis. All those downhill stretches, and there's downhill stretches on both ways. If you're driving an EV or a plug-in hybrid, it actually works in your favor. That ride is really working on the regenerative braking the whole way down. That saves wear and tear on your actual brakes and charges the batteries at the same time. On the flip side, if you're not using those mechanical brakes or they're not being used as much as they should be, just like I said, going downhill a lot, they can, if unused long enough, they tend to get surface rust or road grit, especially in areas with high humidity like Guatemala. Now, but there's a simple fix. And if you ever drive in Guatemala City, it's going to take care of itself real quick. And what I mean is, every so often, you're supposed to stomp on the brakes really hard. That is it. Doing that helps the rotors and the car brakes stay clean and the calipers from seizing up. That simple. And you're going to get cut off every single day when you're in Guatemala City. So, or anywhere in Guatemala's traffic. So It's an easy fix. One more preference while I'm at it. I do not like the factory tires most cars come with. I currently run Michelin Cross Climate 2s on my Palisade, and no, I do not get paid to say that. I wish. If you're somewhere that gets a lot of rain, tires like the Cross Climate on your car make a real difference. The road grip is super awesome. They're great in the snow as well, but I'm not predicting a lot of snow in Guatemala. It does cost you a little bit on your gas mileage, but to me, that's a fair trade off. Now, here's the interesting part. The Chinese cars are available in Central America, Latin America, and Mexico. And they're a lot cheaper than American cars. The cheap price tag is one of the reasons why it is not sold in America. It would hurt American car manufacturers badly. But the other reason is data tracking. The US government likes to point at Chinese EVs specifically, calling them computers on wheels. And here's the thing though, every new car is a computer on wheels these days. Be it gas, EV, hybrid, does not matter. So singling out Chinese EVs on that point is a little disingenuous because the concern is that the Chinese cars send a shit ton of driver data back to the servers in China, and our government has a real problem with that. That I kind of agree with. Fair enough, except your Toyota sends data back to Japan, your Korean car sends data back to Korea, your German cars send data back to Germany. Buy a Land Rover, and that data likely runs back to the parent company, which is in India. So essentially, every car made these days is doing the same thing, be they gas, EV, or hybrid. And on top of that, most of these car companies charge a subscription fee for features that are collecting information on owners that they in turn sell or give away to data brokers. So make that shit make sense. But I digress. Since my plan is to put solar on the house, therefore a pure EV makes a lot of sense to me. I do not see myself doing any excursions in Guatemala in which I will be driving more than 200 miles at a time. So range is not a real concern for me personally. My wife is a different story altogether. She forever has range anxiety, so she leans towards the hybrids. What is funny about that, here in Maryland, even before I retired, her daily commute consisted of getting up in the morning. If she didn't make coffee at home, she would run to Panera, get a coffee and a bagel, muffin, or a yogurt or something, and drive back home because she works from home. She works remotely for her company. That's less than 2 miles a day. So, how do you get range anxiety from that? So, here is my question for you. If you are an American living abroad, expat, slow traveler, however you want to call it, and you buy a Chinese made car, are you selling out? I want to hear where you stand. Send me an email at dyingtoretirepodcast@gmail.com. Now for something a little different. I want to talk about a couple books today, so yes, I'm doing a book review. A guy named Rico, who lives in Guatemala, recently put these out. And although his website markets the books primarily to the under 50 crowd, every generation of man can find value in what he is saying. Gen X, boomers, does not matter. Single, divorced, or you see something coming down that line. These two books have more for you than you might think. Rico's website, ricounchained.com, is where you can find the books. He tells it straight. He does not sugarcoat it. And you already know something is wrong with your life. The dating market for the past 20 or 30 years treats men like shit, and it gets worse every year. You pay through the nose to live somewhere that resents you for it. There's taxes, there's rules, there's permission slips just to exist. You are told you're the bad guy in some story that you never signed up for. And that time clock, your life clock, keeps running whether you do something about it or not. This is how so many men feel these days, regardless of their age. Enrico's answer to all of this? Get out, move abroad, become an expat. He tells you this straight. And you already know this. You've probably felt it for years. You, just like many other men, just keep talking yourself out of doing a damn thing about it. Because the powers that be, the ones selling you this dream, what used to be called the American dream, do not make a dime telling you the truth. Now to the two books. The first one is called The Gringo Advantage. This book is about getting out and what actually changes for a Western man, the gringo, the day he does it. The second book is called The No BS Guide to Living in Latin America. This book is more of a region specific operating manual. It covers everything no one really warns you about, the ground truth and, well, the atmospherics. My one small gripe, and it's just purely technical, nothing against the content about the two books, is they are only in PDF format. They're both ebooks, but they're only in PDF format. I wish Rico had it available in the Kindle format, though it does work on your Kindle app, however you want to call it, or your Kindle device. And I wish he did an audio version of it that may be coming out. I'll ask him about it. One day I may want to interview him. Let me know if you want me to interview him. And now I have read the first book completely. It's an easy read and it's filled with a lot of emotion. You can feel it right through the book. Rico says the book is for all ages, though the marketing's a little different. And I actually agree with him, even though his website, like I just said, skews a little young. A lot of what he is pointing out, the excuses men tell ourselves to stay stuck instead of taking that leap, that does not go away at 20, 25, or 30. If anything, it gets louder by the time you're staring down retirement, be you married, single, or divorced, or seeing things heading that direction. He does not yell at the reader. He does not scream. He just lays out every excuse men make, young or old, to stop moving forward. His writing style reminds me of a blend between two authors. Larry Winget, who you might recall from A&E Network, who wrote You're Broke Because You Want to Be. He also wrote another book called People Are Idiots and I Can Prove It. I have both of those books on audio. And Rollo Tomasi, the man who wrote The Rational Male, excuse me. The Gringo Advantage reads a little bit like a manosphere book, but the actual focus is becoming an expat. It's got realistic goals. And if you do it right, you're getting a blowjob maybe once or twice a week. Not like the majority of old married guys living in the States who cannot even count on getting one on their own birthday. That's just once a year, people, if you didn't know that one. The book even had a quick comment about how Rico knows and can connect you, the reader, to medical folks down there. Docs who know how to get things south of the belt buckle restarted, if you know what I mean. Not for me, I'm good, but I'm willing to do some research on that one purely for a friend. Now, here's the real reason this book belongs in this segment of Dying to Retire podcast. A lot of Rico's advice hits hardest for older men, believe it or not. Divorced men, single men, men who still might want to find love someday, or men who have made peace with just not looking. Because the thing is, the longer you wait, the more the woulda, coulda, shoulda piles up. And that pile will kill you slowly. Here's my own example. 30 years ago, when my wife and I started seeing each other, we had a chance to take my dad down to Guatemala. We never did. My dad has now since passed. And if we had gone, he would have been about 10 years younger than what I am today. And it would have meant something for him to see what we saw down there. My late brother-in-law, Edwin, felt the same way too. He always wanted to take my dad down there as well. Unfortunately, Edwin got cancer and died around 2007 because cancer is a bitch of a disease. Now, Edwin was just, a couple of years older than me. He never got the chance to take my dad down. Life got busy between one thing and another, and I never got to get my dad down there either. My dad had good years, real go-go years, before things slowed down for him. But there were things we could have done better with that time, things we put off. So here's my point, and it's not complicated. When you hit retirement, when you got your Social Security coming in or whatever, a pension, when you are in those go-go years, make them the best mother effing years you possibly can. Do not wait. Do not assume there will be a next year. This is why the book like this belongs here. Not sure if Rico did it purposely, but the book is a retirement pep talk too. Now, I'm about a quarter of the way through the second book. I'll probably finish it tonight. And I will be honest, I have probably broken half of his rules that I've read so far. Well, somewhat bent them. The book is aimed mainly at young, unmarried men. I've said that earlier, which is smart, honestly, because I wish I had this book in the mid-1980s right before or right as I was getting out of the military. This is why I do not fit the general male that he's writing for. I'm an older married guy, so I did not and am not going down to Guatemala as a single man. My wife is Guatemalan, but she has lived here in the States for over 50 years. Yes, she has gone back multiple times over the years, so it's a little different for us than what Rico is writing about in his books. That said, I do agree with a lot what he says about women there in Guatemala and in Latin America. Most of them are not fully westernized, which is a good thing. Now, my wife, God bless her, over the years has picked up a smidgen of that modern woman mentality. So here's my real question. Am I the only one curious about this? Once we're down there full time, does some of that traditional Guatemalan woman mindset come back? I'm not holding my breath, but I'm not hoping for it either. Rico talks about this, and in my optics, he's not wrong. I wish more women loved their men instead of loving the thought of being right, even if they're not. Now, back to the second book and the rules I broke. I bought a house right away. He strongly recommends renting first, but I already had residency, not a tourist visa. I'm married to a Guatemalan who's been a US citizen as well since the 1980s. I also already had close to a year of total time on the ground in Guatemala before any of this. And it's not my first time living abroad. Did that for the government and before that in the military way back in the 80s, right? I broke another one of his rules too. He recommends you live somewhere that gives you the real Guatemalan experience, be it Guatemala City or some of the smaller towns, but not the touristy areas. We're just outside of Antigua, touristy and with an expat community. I love it. And if I'm honest, it's more for my wife's benefit than mine. She is more Americanized than I am. I'm used to living in real shitholes, secured places, but still shitholes, small rooms, no amenities, and I'm fine with that. She would probably struggle with all the noise and the pollution in Guatemala City, which is where she was born, in fact. But living outside of Guatemala, we get the best of both. Quiet, but the city is not that far away. However, I'm just not looking forward to the drive and hearing, are we there yet? Now, here's something else that does not exactly fit Rico's vision. My wife and I still have the option to spend time in Guatemala City. Her father's house is there. That is actually where I stay when I'm down there checking on the construction of our place. We had originally talked about fixing the house up there ourselves, but it is not in the best part of the city. And right now, her father's 92-year-old brother lives on the first floor with some of his family. No bueno. But the plan down the road, once we're settled in our house, is to renovate the top floor of that house. That's 5 bedrooms, two baths, and turn it into a way station of sorts. A place where we or the family, when they're flying in from the States or anywhere else to come see us, can stay there before they head out to our house outside of Antigua. So between the expat bubble outside of Antigua and the family home in the capital, I'm not exactly living Rico's version of go find the real Guatemala, but I do, and I will have a foot in both worlds. So yeah, I broke, okay, bent about half of his rules, but his second book's advice still stands. Same as what he said in the first book about learning Spanish. Do it. You're going to screw it up anyway, so keep doing it. Go get the book. It's a good read. I want to change gears just a bit, and I want to talk about something today, and I'm going to say it as plainly as I can. And this is not me calling anybody stupid. This is just something I've noticed a lot in the Latino community, both here in the States and in Guatemala. A lot of Latinos and Latinas lead with feelings instead of facts, especially when it comes to politics and politicians. I see it in my own family. My wife has a lot of cousins, and I see it in them as well. If Spanish media says one thing or has what many would say a liberal view on a person, an event, or policy, that is the version they believe and that they're going to go with. They do not run out to check what the other side has to say or fact check whether what the Spanish media said was even true. This is not just TV. This is also on radio, social media, etc. I've had conversations more than once about AOC and a few other left-leaning Latino politicians. And I asked them, her family, why do they like her or them so much? every single time, each one of them answers with an almost identical response. She or they are Spanish. She or they speak Spanish. She or they stood up for a Spanish person, even if that Spanish person was an alleged or convicted criminal, or worse. No one really points to a policy. No one talks about a bill that person sponsored. Nobody points to a single productive thing she or they actually did. We have an aunt, great lady, who loves to talk about how fantastic ALC and how proud she is that she is Latina. So when I flat out ask her what ALC has actually done, crickets. What is even funnier to me is when a newscaster on one of the major news networks is Spanish. Doesn't matter which one, just that they are Spanish or have a little Spanish blood in them. The newscaster can be the dumbest motherfucker on the planet, and the hero worship still keeps coming. It is insane. Take what happened in Lake Atitlan, Guatemala, not long ago. The mayor got pushed out of office, and the Guatemalan court stepped in and put him back in office. In short, the town council kicked him out of the office without following the correct procedures. The decision by the courts apparently set off riots in the 1st of July. When the national news covered the story pre-riot, it focused on the accusations of corruption against the mayor, not the illegal removal done by the town council. That part barely got mentioned. And the corruption, the stuff that got the supposed town folks rioting, well, it was the mayor granting operating licenses for more tuk-tuk tour operators. And I'm not saying the mayor is not corrupt. To be a politician anywhere in the world these days, you have to be a little shady. However, it looks like all he was doing was bringing in more competition, and the tuk-tuk mafia did not like that. So they started shit. And the media helped fan the flames. Because if it bleeds, it leads. And to be honest, most of the people rioting likely had no idea why. Now, on that same vein, I want to throw this into the mix and let me know your thoughts on it. My in-laws used to live with us for a while, a couple years back, and I used to sit with them as they watched Spanish television. A couple shows stick out to me because I actually like them. The Zorro series Amazon had a few years back was well done. And then there was a Spanish comedy about female wrestlers known as luchadoras, a typical Spanish comedy. However, my late mother-in-law really, really loved it. But what got me every single time were the commercials. I would sit there watching commercials on Spanish TV, making claims that had no business being on television. And you could tell my in-laws believed them, even if it was just a little. Turns out this is not just a familial quirk. There has actually been research on this topic with some actions from the FTC. Research shows that when Meta actually catches misinformation, English posts and ads get slapped with a warning label about 70% of the time. Spanish posts and ads, that number drops to about 30%. Part of it's because Spanish is spoken across, 20 plus countries? And each of those countries has its own slang and ways of saying things that just do not translate well to English. And the automated systems, most of which are using AI, are not built to catch all of that. On top of that, Meta actually gutted its fact-checking program. And it's not only political misinformation. Have you ever watched commercials on Spanish TV? Especially the local stations? Weight loss belts, creams that supposedly make a woman's boobs bigger, pills that promise you can take them and lose weight, no exercise, no dieting needed. People just watch these ads and they buy this shit, a lot of it. Real money spent over and over on products that never had a chance of doing what the commercial promised. Turns out the FTC has known about this for years. They've gone after these Spanish language ads more than once. They've even sent letters straight to the big networks like Telemundo and Galavision, basically begging them to stop running the commercials. And you know what? These commercials still run, from the weight loss belts to the creams, over and over. So don't let anybody tell you I'm making this shit up or that I am the only one who has noticed this. It is well documented, straight from a federal agency. And here's the double standard, plain and simple. The crap advertised on Spanish language audiences gets less scrutiny. The Spanish audiences get less protection. Same with the misinformation on Meta we just talked about. Whether it's a fact checker missing a political lie or a network letting a bad ad slide on the air, Spanish language media gets away with shit that English language media could only dream about. And they do dream about it. Don't just believe me. Go turn on Telemundo right now. Watch for a couple hours. I see this same pattern with symbols too, not just the news stories. Walk through any mercados in Antigua or Guatemala City, shit, let alone most of Latin America, and you will see a shit ton of Che Guevara shirts on t-shirts, pullovers, whatever. That shirt represents a feeling to the people there. It's anti-capitalist, it's against the old republic, it's standing up against white privilege, whatever the fuck that is. That feeling that they have came from decades of media and pop culture painting him that way. It does not come down from his actual record. His actual record is filled with executions, forced labor camps, cruelty towards indigenous and Afro-Cuban people, gay people. And in a lot of those cases, those are the same people now wearing and selling his face on merchandise today. Not one of these people ever stopped to research who Che really was. Nope. That feeling of him being a savior against the West gets imprinted on them at an early age and sticks. And here's what I find humorous and makes me just shake my head. And a lot of these same family members, and no, I'm not talking about the gringo husbands, will just swallow the news and what the politicians say, hook, line, and sinker. And at least that's what they say in public, pretty much every time. But get them alone, behind closed doors, and it is a different story. Someone they knew or know got picked up by ICE and deported. Behind closed doors, they will tell you straight. That person had 20 or more years to get their documents ordered, but they just didn't do it. Their own kid wants to transition to other sex behind closed doors. They're not on board with that shit at all. Publicly, they act like they believed every single word. Privately, they know exactly where they stand. So I hate that little duplicitous that's in there. I can't say hate. That's a strong word. My wife doesn't like it when I use it. I just dislike that duplicitous. And here's why this bugs the shit out of me. And it's not just the annoying and misleading TV ads. It comes down to security for the USA, plain and simple. A stable Central and South America matters more to this country than most people care to admit. It matters to our border. It matters when it comes to stopping communism, socialism, and Islam from creeping into the Western Hemisphere. Most of Latin America shares a strong Christian heritage. So does the U.S. That is something the U.S. should be building on, not ignoring. So the fix is not more American taxpayer-funded blank checks that is just throwing good money after bad. The fix is real investment, in my optics. Prioritize Latin America the way we currently prioritize Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. In fact, we should prioritize Latin America over Africa, Middle East, and Asia. And any future investments should never again be the kind that fund hormone treatments and gender procedures for children or adults. Now, here's the part that actually gives me some hope, a lot of hope. Leaders like Bukele in El Salvador and Milei in Argentina are proving something. They both lead their countries using logic instead of the old communist or socialist feelings. And the results speak for themselves. And I did not just read that from somewhere. When I was house hunting for a place in Guatemala, I met several conservative Latino realtors and their staff, real people doing real work. They flat out told me they wanted what Bukele built in El Salvador to happen in Guatemala too. They see the potential sitting right there in their own country. It's hard, it's going slow, but it's working. If you're watching leaders like Bukele or Milei govern with logic instead of feelings, do you think that approach can actually spread? Or are they the exception in Latin America? Second, for anyone who has spent real time around Spanish language TV or around family members who watch it, have you noticed the same patterns? They're taking things at face value in those commercials, feelings over facts, no matter what's actually being said in both the commercials and the news channels. I want to hear your thoughts on both. That's it for this week's episode of Dying to Retire. If you have a question or comment on this episode or any other, send me an email at dyingtoretiredpodcast@gmail.com. Hopefully this saves you a retirement or expat headache or two. As always, I'm Doug. This is Dying to Retire, and I'll see you in the next episode.